Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Boring Enterprise Nerdcast. I am playing your lovely host today, Paul Moderman. With me, as always and evermore, is the amazing Yelena Perfilieva. Yelena, please say hi to the guests
Hi,
as usual.
everyone.
And with us today is a special, amazing, across the pond, over the river, through the woods, lovely, lovely gentleman hailing from Australia, Graham Robinson. Graham, welcome to the Nerdcast.
Hey, so wonderful to be here, even if it is a boring enterprise webcast. We'll try and spice it up a bit. But no, feel very honoured and privileged to have been invited to have a chat to you guys, and it's so great in these weird times when we not connecting personally to do these sort of things, so we can just sort of interact in any way we can, right?
Yeah, awesome. and then God, Graham, you're just kicking me off into a tangent already. The lovely thing too is that I almost kind of like this thing where we with these podcasts and the video with it too is it's like we're just doing a hangout, but we're also recording it and we're sharing the hangout with the world. Yeah. And yet that's engaging. I like to watch videos and podcasts and listen to podcasts of people doing this very thing, which is just being nerds together. Right? It's just and who would have thought 5 years ago that I would love to watch this kind of stuff? And here it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I've found is that when you try and put something together, like we've all tried to do it during these COVID times, is let's get the family together for a bloody Zoom hook up on a Saturday night with a glass of wine and that. Mm-hmm. It sort of gets a bit clunky really fast and sort of dies, doesn't it? There are some of these things that are a bit more. Sure, we've booked a time, and and I notice you guys have some sort of rough agenda, which I've only just looked at, so I can't set up without knowing what it was. But those sort of things, especially when you get some people that have got some common interests and ideas and are prepared to share them, those things can work really, really well, right? Because when you're watching them, they get you thinking as well, right? They get you thinking, that's an interesting take on that, or that guy's an idiot, or whatever works. But it stretches the minds in lots of interesting ways.
Yeah. So, we've yammered on for a second, but what we should do as well is give you the chance to introduce yourself to our audience. So please give us the 30-second, 1 minute, whatever. I am Graham Robbo, and this is me, and here are my achievements and whatever. Give us the story of Graham.
Well, so I'm Graham Robinson, but in Australia we have nicknames for everyone. So Robinson becomes Robbo, so I'm Graham Robbo, and you'd be Motto, and Yelena, you'd be that East European chick, something like that. I've been around in the enterprise world since I left school, which was not only last century but many decades into last century. Really had two halves to my career. Half of it was in infrastructure roles. So I was a IT manager, setting up infrastructure everywhere like that. And in fact, I joined SAP Australia as effectively in their IT department, was their IT manager for a while. And then I moved into some project management roles and things like that. And then I went out on my own. And when I went out on my own, I sort of had a vague idea of what I wanted to do, but ultimately it was whatever customers were prepared to pay me to do. And very quickly, it was at a time in the early 2000s when this internet thing and connecting it to SAP was an interesting concept. And there weren't any real, this is almost a decade before UI5 and when SAP discovered the internet.
Right.
So I started developing internet front ends for SAP systems. First one was using the old WML, the markup language for mobile. Mobile phones back then, and then through various iterations of ways of doing it, the business server page framework and lots of HTML and JavaScript and libraries like jQuery and things like that. And I built a whole lot of stuff using Adobe Flex Builder. Okay. If you guys remember that sort of stuff, which got killed by Steve Jobs and the iPhone, things like that. And then, of course, into the UI5 stuff. So strong SAP background, full stack developer in the SAP world. So, as you still need to do, and I'm sure we'll touch on that, when you're building web user experiences for SAP systems, you're building the web services at the back end. and you're building the front end. You've got to do a whole lot. And so that's really, I've been working for myself for about 20 years, and that's effectively what I've been doing the whole time.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, I did a little bit of Graham homework before we talked. I perused your consulting your site, and then I also perused your SAP Mentor Spotlight interview page. And a common theme among both those things is Antarctica.
Yeah.
I would love to know, and so there's a particular line in the Spotlight interview that I would love if you just took a minute and expound on. And that is, you said that going to Antarctica will change you. How did it change you?
That's a really, really good question. Because it in my experience, it changes everyone, but it changes people in different ways. It's certainly visiting it made me so much more aware of what Antarctica is and how fundamentally important it is to issues like the environment, climate change, things like that. I mean, it geographically is the engine that drives our oceans, our weather, everything over the whole world. So that's part of it. Another part of it is that I like getting out and seeing spectacular remote landscapes. And coming from Australia, you know, we have some mountains here we call the Great Dividing Range, and at just west of Sydney there's a thing called the Blue Mountains, which is a great tourist attraction where we go. But by any standard of any country in the world, you would never call them mountains, right? The highest mountain on the Australian continent is 2,200 odd meters high, right? You know, you literally, when you walk to the top of it, on the boardwalk to the top of it, everyone then pulls out their mobile phone to ring their friends and tell them they're on the highest mountain in Australia.
Right, yeah.
So when we go to places as close as the South Island of New Zealand and see those spectacular mountains, or we go to Europe and see those spectacular places, or North America and that, or South America and see the Andes and things like that, the visual, you get overwhelmed visually by those things. Antarctica is a level beyond that. If you can sort of hook in, you that are used to seeing big mountains, if you can, and spectacular mountains, if you can hook into the awe with which I view the first ones I saw in New Zealand and Europe and that, visually Antarctica is next level again.
It's like that much more.
And there's something about, it's not just that they're big mountains, and it's not just they're covered in snow and ice, but it's that they're coming straight out of the ocean as well. So you don't really see that anywhere else, right?
Right.
You know, maybe Greenland and places like that, but things like that. So visually it's spectacular. And then of course that means it's got a unique wildlife, it's got unique seasons, it's got unique things like that. And then layered on top of that is I started, before I went on my first trip there, just wanted to learn a little bit more about the exploration of Antarctica. So I did some reading about the heroic age of exploration and things like that. And there are just some phenomenal, amazing stories, survival stories in a lot of cases, tragedies in some other cases, and that of men in the early part of, especially in the early part of the 1900s, getting down there to really, you know, one of the goals was the South Pole, but just exploring that place, finding where it was, things like that. They're just that are just amazing. So so how has it changed me? Well, certainly before I went, I couldn't have spoken for 2.5 minutes about Antarctica off the cuff like that. So there's one way. And seriously, if I had the time and the money, I would go back every summer, you know, every season. If it was able to do it, I would go back and see it, because it's just one of those places. It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. I would encourage anyone, if you get the chance, you know, it's not cheap, it's not easy to get to, it's not all that sort of stuff, but that's in fact one of the great things about it. It means you get, when you go there, you go with like-minded people, assuming you don't go on one of those big cruises with 5,000 people on the ship. Assuming you're going on an expedition ship on a cruise that's set up not just to stop at Antarctica between a couple of other stops, but to actually, that's the purpose for the trip. You'll be on a trip with, like-minded people who are seeing it for the same, to see people see that place for the first time is quite an experience as well. It's not an easy place to get to. That's one of the great things as well. I constantly say to people now, there are people that claim they don't get seasick. We all know people who say, it's okay, I don't get seasick, right? I've learned after spending some time in the Southern Ocean that if you tell people you don't get seasick, you're either lying or you've never been in the Southern Ocean.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, that's some existential stuff, man.
Yeah. Ooh, that's heady.
Oh.
Guys, are we even ready to drop into some API
Yeah,
stuff
I'm
now?
like, I don't know. It's like
maybe we just
it's a tough segue.
Well, everyone, that was Graham Robinson, and we are the Boring Enterprise Nerds, and we're happy to. No, I'm kidding. Don't turn off your podcatcher. Don't turn off your iPods. Whatever. Let's dive into some of the nerd stuff now. Well, computer nerd stuff, not like traveling nerd and wildlife nerd stuff. So, especially between both Graham, yourself, and Yelena, we have some. We've got some rabble rousers and complainers on this podcast. Let's start to dig into some of the things you guys have kind of the bee's nests you've poked and the bears you've poked around APIs in the SAP ecosystem. Yelena, let's bounce to you first. Actually,
sure.
Give me some of your complaints and some of the reasons why you kind of have latched on to what Graham and others have said in the past, and you yourself have said as well, with regard to APIs and that stuff in the SAP space.
Yeah, definitely. And in case someone is not following SAP community, both Graham and I posted some blogs there. Graham did in 2014, and I did just a few weeks ago. And subject sadly is the same. What's really the state of APIs and all the different types of APIs that we have in SAP ecosystem. There have been some changes since 2014, of course, and maybe we even have more and more different types of APIs. But I'm kind of feeling that even though there might be more, situation is not necessarily better, with developers being able to find them and to use them in the daily jobs that we are doing. And I'm really curious to hear from Graham now, since it's been quite a few years since your post on this and your kind of videos that you had linked there. Do you think so? How do you think API space has changed? Have there been really vast improvements? Maybe my blog was really kind of for nothing. I mean, who cares about global classes? Maybe at this point, I don't know. I do definitely, because I work with those systems. But so what's your kind of perspective from coming from 2014 to 2022?
Yeah, I think SAP and enterprise software is a funny beast. And SAP, which is I worked for a little while for Oracle briefly, but most of my time working with vendor stuff has been with SAP. So that's what I know best. But one of the great technical achievements of SAP is the fact that everything is backwards compatible. The fact that you can take a piece of ABAP code that was written for R2 back in the 1970s or 80s and compile it and run it now on the latest ABAP platform is phenomenal. That's a phenomenal technical achievement. And for most SAP customers out there, they'd go, yeah, but I don't need to do that. Well, let me tell you, if you're running the SAP GL, you are doing that.
You are doing that, yeah.
Okay, that's exactly what you're doing. And that's an amazing thing to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
But that obviously brings some inherent baggage, and that is the baggage, bringing that through. There is syntax and stuff just in the ABAP language, which I'm sure SAP wish wasn't there. And in the last few years, they have actually started to deprecate stuff with their move to the S4 and the new ABAP stack and getting away from supporting multiple databases. Now they only support HANA and stuff like that. They are now deprecating and dropping, not more than deprecating, dropping some of that stuff away, which is, and you can't blame them for doing it all. But the baggage that comes along, though, means that there are things that they don't want to touch and change and things. For example, if I go back to the GL, SAP could rewrite the GL in the latest ABAP with nice in an object-oriented way, with nice open interfaces and APIs and all that sort of stuff, so that we could all post journals to the GL if we wanted to, stuff like that, nice and easy. They could do that. But why the hell should they? You know, first of all, the GL is running fine. Secondly, we all know if you've worked for more than a week in software development, you know that the number one way to break something is to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So they've got a GL that's working and been bedded down, and they know it's working. The last thing SAP needs is for someone to say, "Oh, you've broken the GL," right? that's like end of organization, out of business, see you later, gone, right? So I guess the lack of movement of some of this stuff is perfectly understandable if you view it in some of those contexts, right? Having said that, you know, the world's moved on, and it moves on faster and faster all the time. You know, the internet didn't exist back when this stuff was written, let alone any concept that someone from outside the SAP walled garden would try and execute against their code. At the time it did, they thought, oh yeah, we'll use sort of EDI document type stuff, things like that. They're the only way that people are going to be interacting, things like that. So you can understand why it's not there. But the problem is things have moved on. So then people like myself and like you guys who are building modern interactions with the SAP system are now crying out for a way to interact with it, you know, a way to create a sales order, a way to create a customer record, a way to reset a user's password, for God's sake, things like that from outside the system. And every time we try to do it, it's hard. And our experience working with other things, it isn't as hard, right? Is this open published, you know, a piece of software that's been written in the last 10 years has open publishable APIs that you can just Google. You don't even need to pay for it. You just Google, have a bit of a go, or God forbid, you can jump on there and just fire HTTP requests at an endpoint and figure out how the bloody interface works, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. So where we as developers who want to build stuff quickly and get it out there, and where SAP are as an enterprise software company who don't want to change and break things, are coming into conflict. And it's hard to get them to move. So one of the roles I and lots of other people saw, especially in the Mentor Program, was that we had a role to be the early warning system, if you like, for SAP. We felt we had a role to say, listen, this is where our part of the industry is going, our little software development place is going. And one of those ways was we need ways to do simple authentication. We need ways to be able to interact with your system from outside of it using whatever language we choose and whatever tool set we choose. We need to be able to do that and build professional user interfaces. And to take that to the next step, we then need to be able to sell them to your customers. So we need to, so that's how things about online stores. And if we're going to sell something to your customers, we need a way to get money from them for it, and we need a way to deploy it and things like that and things like so way back, I think probably from 2010, 12 maybe, there's some of the things we've been talking about. And that blog that I wrote in 2014 was in some respect just an extension of that, because as you would have noticed in that blog, that was something that came out of another chat, an online chat I was having with Ethan and John, and that actually came out from another chat in the back channel, these sort of things. Excuse me while I cough. We didn't mention I had COVID last week, did we? I had COVID last week, I'm going to cough. Done. So that's really where all that comes from, and yeah, I'll stop there. I'll let you.
Yeah,
you guys probably got a question. But that's really the context of all that stuff.
I think you made a good point, especially in terms of the developer ecosystem, and there's at least two sides to that developer ecosystem. One is the sort of internal developers who work at customers or for customers and just customize like the little pieces of SAP for themselves. But there's also the developers who, and developer is maybe a narrow term for them, they're the organizations that want to build on the SAP platform and create things that help SAP's customers do things better and more efficiently and all these kind of things. And I think both of those, I think the platform folks are probably more starved for the API level stuff than the internal ones, because I think the internal ones have a little bit more, they have a little bit more ability to sort of poke around and muddle around in their specific installation and do things right there.
It's not just they have the ability to do it, that's what they've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? So that's their core skill. They're what we would have used to call maintenance programmers, as opposed to developers who build something new. They're maintaining existing things. So the standard SAP project team, where you have your ABAPers who are tweaking this, tweaking that, putting an extra user exit here, an extra screen on a field, writing reports, stuff like that. And to make that work, they've had to be deep in the weeds. Yeah. And their core competency is actually not being a developer. It's understanding how SAP works and the SAP data models and how to get in there, and the SAP technical platforms and do that sort of stuff, which is really valuable and useful skill.
For sure.
But man, it takes a long time to do anything, right? And the person who wants to build something new wants to build it quick and get it done.
And so and very much so, I very much agree. And so those folks on the other side, the platform users, the folks who want to sell add-ons and stuff like that too, are a great voice to add to the mix. There are probably, like, number-wise fewer of them, but also I think they raise their voices louder too. And I think that's a key thing for kind of everyone to hear from, is I have, even in places I've worked, we have been eager to build add-ons and been frustrated by, why can't I just make the thing? Why can't I from this box make SAP do what it does already but I just need the interface to do it. I just need to poke it without having complete control of it, right? And that piece is what has been, and I think still continues to be less than what it could be for the use of what goes on there.
It's the biggest thing that's most difficult to explain to your users and clients. And I have been dealing with that for more than a decade, because they're like, oh, but I go here into this screen transaction and I do this. So how come your nice SAP program cannot do the same thing just as easy as I do? Unless, there was also always BDC, exactly. BDC was a weapon of last resort, but how many times we went to that last resort before? Yeah. Now it's sort of not an option anymore. But so I just want to get back a little bit to that global classes, APIs, etc., because there was some feedback after my blog post and post on social media. Like, what do you mean we're APIs? There they are, like on API Hub. It's like full of APIs, and I mean it's nice. I really have nothing against API Hub. It's really useful if that's what works for you. If that's suitable for your use case, it's fine. It's really amazing improvement considering we had nothing before really. But I think I'm seeing trend. Maybe I have been in SAP space for far too long that I'm seeing repeat of the same things, but it's like eerily reminding me of enterprise services yet again, because long time ago, let's say we didn't have that many global classes, maybe like 15 years ago, even when I was starting, there were function modules and you would have to look online, you would have to find some person prepare nice function module list for you explaining what they do so that you can do stuff. So function modules were never really well documented, but then, okay, SAP is like, forget function modules, we're gonna do global classes. Okay, global classes, nice, let's go. Where is documentation? No, forget it. We're going to do enterprise services. Everything is going to be enterprise services. Nice. Where are enterprise services? No, forget enterprise services. It's something. So, and then it's just, you can see this pattern repeating itself. And now here we are. It's another enterprise services, except now it's called API Hub. And it is definitely better than like BAPI transactions that we had before, better than anything that we had before. But it is called API Hub, but those are not all APIs. Like I cannot, for example, my task just a couple of days ago was to create sales activity in SAP. There is a BAPI for that. There is nothing else. There isn't really global class or anything. I was looking for any modern ways. It's not on API Hub either. So to me, that's not really mission accomplished of, we did APIs well, like here is API Hub and you can get everything from it. No, it's again, only part of what you offer, what I can get there. So what kind of hub is it that that gives us only part of it? So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any opinions on API Hub.
Well, this is in great respect the standard frustration, right? Which is that SAP, of course, are using API Hub where they can document all their APIs, but they're building them for the latest platform. And reality is we're working with customers who aren't on the latest platform, who don't have the latest APIs. You're always going to be behind the scene. In some cases, you may be a long way behind. And there's no way SAP are going to go back and retrofit these APIs to legacy systems unless there's a huge demand from customers to do that, and there doesn't appear there is. So that's the standard thing. I will say that since the 2012-2014 period to now, API Hub is a tangible artifact that shows SAP get it around APIs. And we didn't have that certainly in 2012. We were having some discussions and talking about it, but SAP is a really, really big beast. So it's one thing to sit down, even with very, very senior people, and talk to them and find out that either they get what you're talking about, but more often they not only get what you're talking about, they've already parsed this problem, they've already sorted it out, they've seen ramifications that haven't even occurred to you. And you understand that, yes, they do have a really big, wide, strategic view of these issues, but then the issue becomes implementing it in an organization like SAP, getting it filtering right down through all the development teams, all the project teams, things like that. They can't do. I don't know if you guys are aware of the Jeff Bezos manifesto, which was an email he sent way back in the 2000s, which was basically, mate, it's APIs, everything. And he mandated to his product teams, you're going to publish everything as an API, and not only that, you're going to use the APIs. This is the only way you're going to do it, the only way you're going to do it between each other's. SAP is way too big an organization for someone to mandate that, and that legacy issue comes into the mix as well. Whereas Amazon at that stage of its life cycle, he was able to do that, and you can quite clearly point to the success of that strategy. Right?
Talk about pressure.
SAP can't do that.
I mean, the good and anything else aside, kudos to Bezos for like that mandate. I mean, is there any more clear sign of seeing the future than that, right? I mean, that's
absolutely, and especially if you look at the date it was done, and I can't remember the date, but it was really, really early in the process, right?
Just before anybody had that thought. It was amazing. So let's shift our eyes a little bit. Let's shift our focus a little bit. So we've beaten this API horse to death. Let's the horse is dead. Let's bury it and move on. There is a couple. So there's a couple things that have kind of come up in our discussions. One of them, and maybe they're related, I'm not sure, is that, and Yelena, you pointed this out in our secret show notes here, is this concept of there's a lack of SAP rebels out there. Okay, so that's one thing. Put a pin in that for a second. And then we were talking pre-show, which we should have been recording, but whatever. About there's, I guess we all see it. There's an age problem in the SAP ecosystem, especially from the maybe not. I don't know so much about internal, but internal as part of the ecosystem as a whole, there seems to be an age problem. Well, let me back up. Maybe not a problem, an issue, right? Because
that's very American way.
Well, but I'm just saying. But what I mean by that is, I'm not trying to say that being old is a problem. I'm trying to say that
lack of diversity in
where
age
are the young
ranges,
people coming in, right? Because having gray hairs, hello, my beard is gray. Like Like, that's not bad, but you should probably also have people whose beards aren't gray and whose other hairs aren't gray, right? So what's like, is there a connection between those concepts? Yelena, maybe start with kind of explain what you mean by SAP Rebels.
Yeah, so concept of rebel is someone who is not just troublemaker for the sake of troublemaking. He's not like a troll or anything. It's a person who really passionate about something and wants to improve something, and that's a reason for their rebellion, if you will, because they see an issue and they would like to get rid of this issue. They would like things to be better.
Right.
So I think that was probably a lot like original SAP Mentor concept before the word influence hit like Oxford Dictionary. So yeah, but I see with definitely, and we spoke about it before, I think, with various different guests. The whole concept of mentor program has changed a lot, and I just don't see this space of rebels in SAP ecosystem being filled by any people, especially any new people. There are still people, I can count maybe myself, there are some, I think Graham, maybe if you would like to be counted as rebel, we would love to have you. There are a couple of more, kind of semi-troublemakers maybe. I don't want to put anyone on the spot there, but that group is kind of shrinking, and age is one of the issues. Obviously, I'm not going to do that forever. I'm going to retire maybe some up to years. And I don't really see anyone who would be wanting to step into the shoes of the former mentors or current rebels or whatever.
Rebels,
so
or
yeah, so
bear pokers, or whatever. Yeah.
Is there just no outfit for that? Or is Gen Z completely doesn't care about SAP? So yeah, I'm curious, Graham, what's your opinion on that kind of transition between generations?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. We started particularly talking about the age thing, but I think we would generally all agree that in our industry there is a lack of diversity generally.
Yeah.
And ageism is one of those things. There are, in fact, others which I would argue are probably bigger problem than just ageism. But I mentioned before that I've been out working for myself since I left SAP for almost 20 years now. I was at an age when I left SAP where I could foresee that my age would become a limiting factor finding work going forward. So that was one of the motivations for me to try working for myself, because I could foresee that, in 10 or 15 years time, when I was looking for another job, in the job market, that the young keen guys would get the job and I wouldn't. I understood that, but it's not a new thing. In terms of the voices that you're talking about, the challenging voices for companies like SAP, in some respects, there's lots of things that have changed, I think. First of all, social media has made the world a scarier place online. If you've got an opinion, you're less likely to share it because some mad troll will freaking attack you anyway, And I'm a grey-haired developer that no one could do it. But if you're a young, attractive female and you want to share an opinion online, you're bloody brave, right? You're taking on a lot, and so I perfectly understand why you would not want to do that, in those sort of things. And the same thing for racial minorities, religious, not so much minorities, but not non-mainstream religious groups in some countries, things like that. You stick your head above the pulpit and some idiot takes a swing at it, right? And it didn't used to be like that. In terms of the SAP Influencer Program, Mentor Program, my experience in the Mentor Program was overwhelmingly positive when I went in there. And the thing that I found, and it was the SAP community was a much smaller, more intimate group than it is now as well, right? But my memory of the experience, and this might be my rose-colored glasses, but my memory of the experience was there were people there, there were lots of people there who were critical of what SAP were doing or had strong opinions and ideas about things. And they shared them. And in sharing them, you very quickly worked out who were the people who were just shouting for attention and who were the people who had put some thought and some reasoned argument behind it and were prepared to defend what they were saying and debate their views and things with other people. And those people were the ones that the community builders inside SAP recognized. These are our foundation clients. As we're building this new online community, these are our foundation people we want to get in there. These are the people we want to recognize and highlight as an example of how we want other people to interact in our community and how we want to bring them forward. And that was their motivation. Their motivation was to do that, to highlight people that were opinionated, had ideas, were prepared to share them, but did it in the right way, in a respectful way, and were prepared to engage and debate about it and even change their mind if someone else came up with something else and, you know, different opinions, different ideas. And they were the people that formed the foundation of those early influencer groups, Mentors being one of those. And they were there, first of all, when you recognize those people, that helps, that encourages that behavior. But more importantly, it encouraged other people in the community to try and emulate that behavior, to look to those people for how they should behave and the sort of interactions they should have. And I think that strategy overwhelmingly worked. I think it worked very, very well. And it worked in some respects too well, because I think one of the things that happened with the Mentor Program is it grew up and SAP wanted to start meeting with us regularly and having, you know, and so we started having big meetings with executives and things like that. They started off with product teams. And I think once we got to the executive level, that was probably a bit too close to the sun, because really SAP executives and the mentors who are hardcore practitioners and almost universally were developers, or at least what we would call basis people, right? So hands-on practitioners. That's not really where we needed group interaction, you know, 30 mentors talking to, you know, the CEO of SAP. Maybe what we needed was 4 or 5 really key ones who could interact at that level, talking to that person. But the great bulk maybe should be talking to a product team about what their product were doing and things like that. And so I think in some respect, and to a certain extent, there were various versions of trying that, and there were those small, more focused, one-on-one, carefully selected people. But these attempts to have, you know, 50 on-site SAP mentors meet with, you know, Hasso Plattner, while it might be good for the ego of the 50 mentors in the room, Hasso got nothing out of it. Yeah, he's looking at his secretary saying, "Why am I here? I could be on my flight home," stuff like that. And so I don't think that sort of stuff helped. But I don't think that was necessarily a problem. I just think it was growing pains. It was growing pains of the thing. And I think a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now are growing pains. So what's happened in the last few years is SAP, in my view, again, through my rose-colored glasses, looking back at the relationship between the Mentor Program and SAP, I felt there was a very much a mutual ownership of that relationship. I thought the relationship between SAP and the Mentor Program was driven by both sides. It was owned by both sides. And both sides were prepared to step up if the relationship had problems. So, for example, if a mentor went rogue and started, you know, went off the reservation and started bloody criticizing SAP openly in public with no real backup and nothing there, and wasn't prepared to talk about stuff like that, you know, some of the senior mentors might pull the person aside and say, "Mate, just calm down. You know, what is it you want to achieve? And what makes you think doing this is going to help you achieve it? You know, maybe if you want to achieve this change in some attitude at SAP, a better way would be to engage more directly and more privately with these people to try and share your opinions, things like that." I saw that happen quite a few times. I think what's happened now is that the ownership of the relationship has now moved away from the mentors, and the relationship is now owned almost exclusively by SAP. They set the parameters, they set the guidelines, they set all that sort of stuff. And you can understand why they do that and why that would happen and things like that. But I think the program, not just the Mentor Program, but these influencer programs are poorer because of that. And I think if the mentors as a cohort themselves took more responsibility for the relationship, I think it would be a healthier one.
Yeah, because I think what you're describing, that's definitely kind of anti-rebelism, if you will, because rebels, they are not guided by anyone. They are driven only by their own passions and their point of view. And again, in no way I won't ever bash, SAP Mentor Program. My time there was, just as you said, very, very great, and I'm very grateful to SAP and especially every mentor, and you, Graham, personally. You were ultimate mentor's mentor all the time for my experience there. But I definitely feel that the changes that have been happening there, they have not been really, I think, healthy for SAP themselves as a result.
Yes, some of the people inside the mentor program, in fact, a lot of them too, still inside the mentor program, would disagree strongly with us, and they think that the mentor program is doing what they want it to do, and they're very happy with it, and moving on. So this is very much my personal view, and as I said, rose-colored glasses with a lot of history looking back.
Right.
But yeah, and people inside SAP are very, very happy with the way the mentor program is working as well, where they're having much more focused, nuanced, targeted conversations, which they're very comfortable won't get in the public domain. So that's important to SAP. And so they're very happy with the way things are going, generally speaking, right? It's just different, right? And times change, and I remember talking to one of my mentors who used to be in the mentor program, and talking about some of my frustration with it, and it was very cleverly told, sometimes the mentor program doesn't outgrow you, sometimes you outgrow it.
Guys, this is so as a relatively new SAP mentor, and as someone who, calendar wise I haven't had quite as many calendar pages torn from my calendar as you guys, let's say. This is really fascinating to hear. And I definitely feel like I don't have quite as much of a historical perspective on the influencer programs in any shape or form. So I just want to say, I appreciate you guys bringing up your experiences in the various shapes and sounds that you guys kind of went through with that, because it helps me understand, understanding the past helps to understand now, right? And so understand my experience now is informed by things you guys have gone through in those processes. So anyway, this is just a long-winded way of saying.
Yeah, and I guess you just twigged something with me, Paul. We started off talking to this about lack of diversity, especially ages, things like that.
Yeah.
It's probably good that oldies like me, with all that history and baggage and looking back with my rose-colored glasses, aren't there, right? We can't be involved certainly in recruitment and the way it goes now to anything like the level we were, because we need a new generation of people coming through. We need new people in there, and we need to have that constant renewal. And it's not going to come with a grumpy old bloke at the back of the room saying it was better in my day, right? That's not the way for it to get renewed.
I think you just described. I think you just you created a new group right now, the grumpy old blokes.
Shout out to Eddie DeClerc.
Okay, so let's shift gears one more time, real quick, guys. And this is broader than just. Let's take this broader, if you want. Take it broader than SAP. Make it tech, make it whatever. What grinds your gears these days? What really pisses you off about this, that, whatever? What would you like to say to the world, or to our listeners, which is frankly most of the world, guys? But what would you like to say to anybody listening about what's grinding your gears right now in what you're doing, what you're seeing, anything like that? You have the platform. Graham, the ball is yours first, if you choose to accept the.
Yeah, so
if you call the rugby ball, it's yours.
Cricket's my game, but
whatever you call the cricket ball, it's yours.
I guess the thing that I've found, especially in the 20 years that I've been working for myself, is and disappoints me, is the lack of professionalism in my industry. And this is nothing to do. It's certainly not enterprise software specific or anything like that, but just generally in the IT industry. I think we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. I think we should be better at our jobs. I don't think training us should be our employer's job. I think it should be our job. I think we should be like other professionals, like doctors and lawyers who don't get a degree and stop learning. I think we should have lifelong learning, and we should be just self-motivated to do that. I think we should charge our customers value on what we deliver. I don't think we should just be charging based on a time clock. Yeah. I think we should be honest with ourselves in the value we're providing, and if we're not providing value, we should not send them a bill or even walk away from the customer a bit more often, because I think those bad actors in our industry drag us all down. And so I would like to see a higher level of professionalism in my industry. I've been fortunate enough to come across lots and lots of people who are unbelievably professional, and to a certain extent, they are the majority of the industry, right?
Yeah.
But it only takes a few dodgy people to drag you down, you know. We've all had to maintain code written by someone who had no idea what they were doing. Okay, and you wonder why that person got there. Why wasn't that person in an environment that was where they were brave enough to say, hey, listen, I don't know what I'm doing here. I need a hand to do a better job here. Things like that. That to me is the big thing. I think we need to be better professionals at what we do.
Yelena.
Yeah, I think it's I just have a comment to Graham's note there. I feel like there should be some kind of global league of developers, maybe like worldwide secret organization, where I, as a developer, can go and complain about the work of other developers to them directly, instead of going through like Twitter and social media accounts, you know, poor people doing their marketing who have no clue what I'm talking about. Because how many times you go to a store and you see like terminals there, that really sucks, you know, and there are some bugs that can be easily prevented. There is UI that makes no sense whatsoever, or like whoever is in charge of Skype, like at Microsoft, and just like meet me on camera one. Like I have some words to say to you. If it was nicer 10 years ago, then you're not doing a great job. So there should be a channel like for developers who just tell, hey, you know what, start giving crap about your job, you know, start. But so
professional organizations do that, right? Yeah, sorry to cut in, but you know, organizations that have proper code review processes and proper change management and things like that, it works, right? And it encourages people to say, hey, listen, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me out? Can you give me a hint? Things like that. So it's not like we're shouting in the wilderness. It's just that there needs to be more of it, in my view.
Yeah, exactly. So my kind of what Russell's my dream is sticking within SAP, because otherwise I would diverge too much into US politics. With SAP, I think my main thing, why are good things always like horizon, like somewhere far in future with SAP? Like the same API debacle, like, oh, we're building APIs for steampunk. Okay, you did such a stellar job with BAPIs, function modules, classes, enterprise services, and everything, and now you're doing it in steampunk. I'm just curious. I might be eating my own words like 5 years from now, but I'm curious, even after I retire, if someone else will be sitting there and steampunk is like a few years old and they're sitting there and having the same exact issue. Yet SAP is like, oh, there's like schmoompunk now, and it's everything. Forget steampunk. It's like yesterday's news. Everything is new. We're doing new platform, giving it 5 different new names, and it's always like horizon moving and moving, like just farther and farther from you. So I just really want to know, like, why is it always like that with SAP? Yeah, but back to you, Paul.
I think because you guys like I'm gonna here's a confession. When I handed the cricket ball to Graham a couple minutes ago, I had no idea what I was gonna say. I'm glad I was playing the host to like hand off to other folks then, because I didn't know. But you guys both in what you said got me thinking. And it might be a little more broad, but still applicable to actually what we've discussed today, is that I think one thing that grinds my gears or wrestles my jimmies, or, pick your funny little phrase for that, is we're all familiar with the phrase, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That formulation comes from like King James Bible, but that's a moral discovery that predates the Bible, right? That's been part of many, many civilizations and spiritual practices for thousands of years. I think the core piece of that is basically empathy. In other words, like, I have to imagine that I myself occupy the space in the shoes of the person across from me in whatever I'm doing. And I think if empathy is the core value that you take forward with you, a lot of other things shake out in the process, right? So, because Graham, you touched on, and I think it was very salient, was the idea that if you say something that's like 2 feet left of or 2 feet right of whatever, like middle road on Twitter, you will get like beaten into submission by a mob of, tweet wielding ruffians, right? Or the same thing for whatever else. Or as a developer, if you have empathy for both for the compiler, but also for empathy for like the next developer who is doing work after you, and you take the time to think, if I was 5 years away from seeing this code, what would I want to see to make this work right for me and the future? And if you're and then take that further, take that to your interactions with folks in the business who need things, and your interaction with customers and clients who need things. If empathy is the center of every word you say, so much else falls into place, and so much else comes to life from that. So that's what grinds my gears, is that empathy is not the center of every word that comes out of my mouth or others' mouths. And I endeavor to change that, and I would like to see that change elsewhere as well. Okay, so last.
That was deep. That was really deep, wasn't it?
Guys, we're going deep, man. This is like, just guys, what if the whole universe was just made of like marshmallows? Like, wouldn't that be crazy?
Like Elon Musk.
This is where we're on Joe Rogan, and I'm smoking a joint. Yeah. So Graham, as our deeply respected and honored guest, the last word is yours. Is there anything you want to say or promote or bring to the listeners that you're working on, that you're thinking about, that you're trying out these days? You have the last word. Anything you want to promote?
No, I don't want to promote or push anything I'm working on, but I will just roll back on what we were just doing, because we got a bit deep there. And, and you kept saying, you mentioned treat others as you would treat yourself. Absolutely. Empathy, all the great stuff. And I guess the other thing that flows for me out of that is pay it forward too. If if someone, if you've got an opportunity to pay it forward, please do.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can't say it any better than Ramo himself, who has said the last word. And now the Boring Enterprise Nerdcast is signing off. Graham, thanks for coming on.
Oh, it was boring.
Yelena, as always, great to see you. I mean,
Thank you.
I hope you're never not here, because you're a co-host, so please always be here. And from all of us, goodbye, and hopefully we'll see you soon.